All right, welcome back to the Design Build Hunt podcast, which is presented by Whitetail Partners. Today, I've got Greg from Ohio on the line and Kurt from West Virginia, right?
Yes, sir. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Thanks for coming on. It's a weird day. It's a snow day here in Georgia, which those don't happen very often. So if you guys hear a little extra background noise, that's my children running above my head, sprinting back and forth. We don't own proper snow gear anymore. Since we moved back south from Wisconsin. And so they just keep coming inside and changing clothes. Just another set of wet, sloppy clothes going onto the floor. And so it's going to be a mess when I get back upstairs. But you guys have had some snow recently there too, Greg. You got dumped on, huh?
Yeah, we ended up with the total accumulation. What I heard was right around 14 inches, so it was quite out of the ordinary, but it has been a pretty cool opportunity to get out and kind of follow some deer around through the woods and learn a little bit extra, and I always take advantage of that whenever we get it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kurt, you said you guys have kind of been on a snow day all week.
Yeah, I mean, pretty similar accumulation is Greg there. Yeah, it's been because the kids are loving it though, because they came off a winter break and rolled right into a week off of school with snow. So I
Man,
can relate. Sled riding everywhere. We have a pretty nice hill behind us, so we've had some sled riding parties and kind of stuff scattered all over my living room right now. Snow apparel, boots, all that good stuff, but. Have about 4 sleds parked in my backyard, and at any time, like yesterday, I went outside to actually, for some reason, I wanted to spray paint my tree stand and go outside, and there's 4 kids in my yard sled riding. So
oh my,
just kind of randomness, but good time to be a kid for sure.
yeah, man, that's awesome. So, Kurt, is that typical for you guys to get a lot of snow?
I mean, yeah, yes and no. I mean, when I was a kid, I feel like it snowed a lot more. But it like last year, same thing happened. We got a lot early and then it kind of died down. But we're not in the super mountainous part of West Virginia here, but we will get snow. So yeah, I mean, we're used to it, and I grew up here, so it's really no big deal. Now the mountainous areas, they got pounded, like the ski resorts. Like I guess ski resorts are probably loving it for sure.
Right.
But yeah, we get a lot of snow here. We have a winter, whether you like it or not. My wife hates it. I kind of like it. So it is what it is.
Right. So I've got to know before we dive in. So I did a podcast yesterday with Lee from Tennessee, who's our Whitetail Partners consultant there in Tennessee, and we joked that everybody had let the Southern boys loose on an episode of the podcast, and there was nobody there to supervise. I'm curious, Kurt, is West Virginia the South or not? I gotta know, in your opinion.
Oh man, I would say probably not.
Probably not.
We've all, I went to Tennessee. We went to Pigeon Forge last summer, and I've been to the Carolinas a lot. And I'd say once you like crest into Virginia into North Carolina, in my mind, that's like the dividing point where things kind of shift. It seems like.
Okay. All right.
That's just my opinion, though.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But one thing's for sure, I've been watching a lot of deer hunting content coming out of West Virginia over the last couple of years. There's a lot of guys that are doing it, and there are a lot of really good deer. In
West Virginia, yeah. I mean, it's unique because you have some states down south that are archery only, and I know if you watch a lot of the like public land hunting feeds out there, and there's a few, that's where they're targeting, and there's some huge deer. I mean, it's super mountainous, but it's archery only. Um, there's a lot of deer density here. It's because we own some property in West Virginia. I grew up on our family farm, and there's a ton of deer, but the age class isn't quite where I'd like it to be, which is how I ended up in Ohio. Um, and I think a lot of it has to do with you can shoot unlimited, well, not unlimited, but you could harvest a lot of bucks. We've cut that back the last couple years, but and we have a high-powered rifle season, and we kind of lack the agriculture. So when you put all that together, it's hard to make that older age class that you need. But plenty of deer though running around for sure. I bet if I go outside right now, there's probably 10 to 15 deer up around the house here. But it's a target rich environment for
Right.
sure.
Right. Yeah, well, let's jump in. So we've obviously got your property pulled up here. You started
Yeah.
working with Greg. I think you guys said it was like last November when you guys first talked. You found him
Yes.
online somehow, either social
Yeah.
media or something like that. You reached out to Greg. What was it? First of all, tell me a little bit about your property, and number two, what was it that drove you to reach out to try to work with somebody? Like, what are the pain points that you were experiencing up to that point?
Yeah, so I mean, the main thing was, like I just had mentioned, I've grown up hunting my entire life and kind of doing what Greg does at an amateur level like 20 years ago, just kind of, reading. I read a lot of books, tried to educate myself and experimented in my youth on our West Virginia farm. And I really, really, really like designing the habitat to where you want it to be. That said, I kind of hit that wall where realizing I want to target a larger rack buck, and that's hard, few and far between here in West Virginia. We've killed some nice deer, but it's like once every decade. So that led me to Ohio, and I went down the road of we leased property for a number of years, and then that kept kind of falling through. Then I ended up with an outfitter down in southern Ohio and just really fell in love with the place. And once those leases had fallen through, I said to myself, I want to try to buy my own little parcel. And, I'm doing it on my own. So to be realistic, I had to kind of start that financial journey myself. So, fast forward like 3 to 4 years of kind of just tucking some money away and kind of looking around, go to the outfitter down there, really like the place, and then that was just what prompted me to kind of take action and connected with a realtor down there, connected with a lender that did like loans on farm and agricultural properties. And just kind of as fate would have it, where I hunted with this outfitter was very, very close by to where this property was. And really, all how it all came to be was I drove down there the day after Christmas, would have been 2 years ago, and the realtor just showed us around all these properties. And what I liked about this one particularly was the fact that it was raw in the sense that the landowners were, it's like a family property, if you will. And you see that bottomland there. They farm that and they don't hunt. So, to me, it was the opportunity and the price. I was able to kind of slide in there with a very, very reasonable price because it had sat for like a year.
Okay.
So all that, so to kind of tie that in where Greg comes in, to me, it's kind of like, okay, I got a really good value on this property. I like how it lays. It feels a lot bigger than 74 acres when you're on it.
Hmm.
And me being, I have a distance barrier and I have children who are pretty active with sports and I coach and all that. So time is of the essence right now for me. So my thought was I want to partner with somebody that can help me just kind of like push it forward, if you will. Like I know what I need to do, but actually getting it done is another thing.
Right.
Um, so that's where I started looking around. I'm like, well, you know what? Let me see if I can find somebody. And then as fate would have it, stumble upon Greg, and you know, he's actually nearby. We have a lot of things in common, and so that's kind of the big picture of how we came to acquire this parcel and why.
Yeah. So, Greg, whenever you showed up to this place, what are some of the things that you knew were going to be important for moving forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, undoubtedly, it's really consistent across all properties down here in southern Ohio, is you just have to find ways to use the terrain to your advantage. With how rugged the
Mhm.
landscape is down here, there's already only so many ways that these deer are using the ridge system that the properties are on, especially in this size range. So I knew going into it, I had a few waypoints marked out of where I really wanted to try to focus on revolving this design around, which ultimately led to a really good successful season right off the get-go for us on this property. But that would definitely be the overwhelming thing, was focusing in on those standout terrain features and how can we shape different sections of this design around those standout features.
Right, right. What were, I guess, give me a couple of the features that maybe jumped out to you, and we can maybe zoom in on them on this on the map here.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll kind of zoom in and tilt it here so that way we're able to get a better idea of just how much elevation we have changing
Wow,
throughout the property. Quite
wow.
the ridge system. And I know it's something that Kurt and I have talked about as we've walked around the property and we've worked on it. It's definitely not a property that is set up to hunt effectively for just any everyday hunter. It really does require somebody that takes very good care of themselves physically if you want to have and keep that stealthy access. So that was definitely a big thing that we had on this property. As we kind of look here, there's this main drainage system that runs all the way up the mountain through the center portion of the property, and then it
Mhm.
starts to flatten out into a pretty large bench system right around here in this U type of shape. So what we wanted to do, there's an old logging road that's this white line that comes through the property. This was
Mhm.
a really big focal point right here at that drainage top, what I often refer to as those drainage tops. And you'll see how we just really converged a whole bunch of different lines of deer travel with improved travel corridors centering right around this drainage top area. So that was actually the location that we referred to as like our A plus spot when we were walking through the property, and knew that we really wanted to focus a lot of this deer activity in this because it was that standout terrain feature, and then also just knowing what we knew about outside hunting pressure from the neighboring properties, we wanted to try to focus a lot of the deer activity within this side of the ridge system.
Right, right. Now, Kurt,
Hmm.
you mentioned earlier that you have like a distance barrier there. How far is this property from you?
About 3.5 hour drive. It's an easy drive. Like two turns, but it's still about 3.5 hours.
Right.
Which isn't terrible. I can knock it out. I think it's just, family obligations often interfere, and
Yeah,
you can't just hop in the truck and drive out there at, 3 o'clock and hunt like I can here. So,
that's right. That's right. So how did that distance factor into what you wanted to accomplish on this particular property? Because, like you said, it's not the kind of spot where you're just going to say, you know what, I think I want to hunt this afternoon, and you
right.
pick it on up the road. So, how did that influence what you were trying to accomplish here?
Well, I mean, I guess for me, I just know after hunting down in that area and meeting other people in this area that I just wanted to feel like I'm in the game to kill, 140, 150-inch deer every time I'm out. So I was willing to sacrifice the distance in order to feel as if I'm in the game each and every time.
Right.
And really, it's kind of good too. I realize for my mental sake, just to kind of it allows me that to kind of disengage from like my life here. When you drive out there, and it's like I don't know, Gray can probably contest to this. Very low stress down there, and it's like you're going back in time like 40 years, and the people are wonderful. So I really enjoy just the whole energy down there, and your cell phone hardly works. So here at home, it's pretty busy for me, just between like work, I run a business, and family things. So it's a good change of pace for me. So that's kind of been I guess, a benefit that I didn't intend. Because you got to hop in the car and pack up, and once you kind of, you're an hour in, your mindset's kind of changing into hunting mode.
Right.
So I really enjoy that part of it actually. Just
Right.
wish it was a little closer, but it's all good.
Yeah, you're still within that bubble. Like you can
Yeah,
easily
it's not
come
bad.
back in a
Like,
day.
there's been multiple times where like, I went down, there was a couple cold fronts this year, and on a Sunday I'm like, you know what? I'm going to just drive down there and hunt Monday, stay the night, come back Tuesday night. And, I was a little tired when I got home, but still I was able to hunt those 2 days and be back in time to work on Wednesday. So,
Right. Once you're close enough to be able to finish an evening hunt and still get home at a somewhat reasonable hour. You're not 6 hours away where you leave
Right.
leave the property at 6:30 and boy, you're not home till midnight or later. Like
Yeah.
that's a very different kind of
It's r-
flow.
yeah, it's right on the cusp, you
Right.
know.
Right. So let's talk a little bit about the actual day of the on-site. So when you worked with Greg, what are some of
hmm
your big takeaways? What are some of the big things that maybe surprised you? Because I'm guessing you were fairly familiar with the property before you got connected with him.
Yeah, I mean, so when we looked at it, it was myself and I brought one of my friends along with me who we hunt a lot. And I would classify, both of us as, hunters that have been around that kind of know what to look for. And we do a lot of public land hunting as well. So it's kind of like anything else. Like we knew the potential was there. We had our own ideas, but it's kind of what was good for me was having somebody that professionally does this and that's all that they do to also take a look at it and provide their thoughts on it to kind of give me more confidence in it. And when we bought it, like I keep referring back to, I knew it was a raw parcel just because it's never really been hunted. And the previous owner had timbered little pieces of it and left a lot of like debris in there. So there's a lot of bedding in there. But it just gave me the confidence, I would say, more than anything, that like, okay, what Greg's saying is what my buddy and I were thinking, but he's also going to hold, there's going to be an accountability factor there that we're going to get stuff done that like otherwise, I don't know, you get busy in life, right? And I could say,
Oh,
hey, I want to do all these food plots. I'm going to do all these bedding areas. And the next thing I know, 3 years have gone by and nothing's happened. So for me, it was having a partner that I trusted and knew that they have a high level understanding, because to me it's a big investment of not only money, but when we get down there I want to know we put the time in to bring my friends and family to this parcel as well and kind of share this with them, because it's a special place for us. So
right. Right. What are there other, I guess, considerations as far as other types of hunting, other recreation activities? You mentioned it's a special place for you guys. I know you've got some kids, so what are some
hmm
of the other things that you were trying to not cram into the property, but fit on there as well? Like you probably want this to be a fully orbed property, not just the deer sanctuary. So what else were
yeah.
you trying to get into here?
Well, the number one goal was to take what we have and improve upon it to make it the best parcel in that system. Um, that was the main objective. And then kind of along with that, what I've seen happen is it's brought my friends and my brother, I have one brother, closer together. Um, because I don't know, when I was a kid, we grew up going to like what we call deer camp, cabin in the woods, all my dad and all his friends. And as a kid, I just really love that. And as another thing that's recently taken place, we actually just purchased a little hunting cabin, one parcel over with another 20 acres.
Okay.
And my brother, so for me, I'm trying to bring back like deer camp for 2025 because there's a lot of public land opportunities right near here. So we now have this and another 20 acres with a hunting cabin, and it actually came with like a metal building with some ATVs and like a commercial mower. It's hilarious little. It's really funny how it all came together. But so for me, it's kind of tying in the opportunity to harvest a mature buck each time you're out, improve the original parcel that we bought, because to me, it's kind of like a fixer-upper real estate deal where it's the right area, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done. But if you do it, you're going to prosper down the road. That's where Greg comes in. And then we find this cabin literally one property over just comes up for sale. And my brother actually went in with me a little bit. So now he's invested, and he had kind of, he's the same way. He has a business he's running, had a home situation. He was working on his house for a couple years, two kids. So he had kind of fallen out of hunting a little bit. But this year he came down and was actually hunting with me when I harvested my buck, and he kind of got fired up again. So
That's so
it's
cool.
kind of like bringing it all together with, to me, hunting. Like, yeah, I want to kill a deer, but I also like the camaraderie part of it too.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, hunters are all great people, and I've made some really like Greg, like just met a lot of good people through this hobby. That when you get older, your hobbies, you got to have your hobbies to keep you sane. And this is really all. Sport days are over. I coach a good bit, but this is outside of that, this is all I have. So we're
Yeah.
just going all in on it.
That's incredible, man. To hear too, I mean, now you're talking 90 acres in the same general area. You're talking
Yeah,
a home base, which it, it doesn't matter the property. Having a home base changes the game. If you've got a
yeah.
place on the property and you're not staying at the local hotel or whatever, having a spot to store some tools changes the game,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and
So,
that was always the vision. Like it just kind of like I'd been telling my friends for years, I'd love to have like a little simple cabin.
mm,
And we were actually in another state on a public land hunt. And my buddy was like, "Hey, check this out. It's right down the road from you." And I'm looking at it. I'm like, this isn't, I'd never been past my parcel though, I guess.
wow,
And so like, I had a 6 hour drive home the next day. We hunted that this is like a 9 o'clock in the evening. He and I hunted the next morning till about noon. And then I hit the road to drive back home and just called the guy up who had it listed. And just kind of as fate would have it, it all worked out. I don't really know how because he, was getting a lot of calls on it because it's unique property, but somehow kind of just said, "Hey, we're right down the road. This is really a special thing for me. Is there any way we could like go under contract and let nobody else look at it for a period of time?" And he ended up doing that for me and gave me a 2 week leeway that
wow,
you know 2 week the fall 2 weekend my brother and I actually drove down 2 weekends after this initial call, and it all worked out. So
man.
you just never know.
That's terrific. Greg, as you guys, got to this property and covered it, one of the things really standing out to me is you had to have some creative access, right? When you've got
Yes.
a high bowl like this with access from down below, you gotta get a little bit creative. So tell me about the access going into it, and maybe as you guys covered the property, what are some of the things that, other than the kind of the A plus plus spot there, what are some of the other things that stood out that you knew you either needed to capitalize on or hopefully improve?
Yeah, so the first thing that was really helpful for this, that property that was split off where he purchased from, he still has the ability to access through that farmland area up into different sections of the farm, which you can see really opens up a lot of frontage of different angles that we can come into the property on. And
Right.
then in addition to that, all of those existing logging roads that were on the property, we definitely still utilize those to get in and out because there's only realistically so many ways that you can get in and out of a lot of places when you're talking about this type of terrain. So there are definitely more old logging roads on the property than what the white lines show here, but these are just the main ones that are relevant to all of our access points because it can be difficult to maintain that visual block when you're trying to hunt some of the better areas of a property like this. So really the main importance is going to be is how can we contain that access onto well-established road systems like these logging roads where we can at least be quiet, because even though if they're able to see you, if they're not hearing you kind of stomp through the woods, step on twigs, do things like that, then you're really able to get in and out of different sections of the property. So with that in mind, we have different oriented ridge systems, which basically we're just going to be using different roads to access based off of how we're hunting those different oriented ridges. So a lot of the access, as you can see, was revolved around the main road leading up that bowl system in the center. And then we had
Mhm.
another facing slope over here where we have just one main road that takes us all the way to the top, and we're really hunting very close to that road. So although we're
Mhm.
hunting what you'd be visualized as the center portion of our property, we're hunting right off of that logging road. So our impact on this large area where the deer are spending a majority of their time, we're not stepping foot in there. We're just sticking right to that logging road. And that has been one of the best ways that I've found that we can limit the amount of impact we have on a property like this.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's terrific.
I agree. Yeah,
For-
that helped a lot because year one, was kind of just try and figure it out. And we did a lot of like hanging hunts where I would just kind of pack in, pack out. And there was about 3 days in a row where I started at the bottom and went all the way up to the top there where you see the green, packing in and out with my saddle, which was, but then I realized like I'm doing a lot of disturbance there to the property. This year though, like Greg had mentioned, we went down and did some work together, and I did 3 pre-hung sets, and that was a difference maker because our invasion was minimal, and we also cut access routes in. So I think that was another critical thing that we were hunting much smarter, not necessarily harder. And the access routes, especially, were a game changer.
Definitely. Keeping you quiet. So what are the three that you decided to make as permanent sets, Kurt?
Well, that Greg had identified him, and just like anything else, my summer was pretty busy. Then I had a little foot injury going on. So then, like right around the same time baseball was ending, where my schedule would free up, I was kind of down for a minute. So that said, we went down. I think we had a day and a half. So I knew I was going to hang a set at the A+ spot that we already looked into.
That's this guy
Mhm.
right up
Right
here.
there, yeah. So
Mhm.
I hung that set. That's where we actually ended up killing. I'm not sure if I said that or not. So we hung that, and if you scroll out down below there, right above the field, we hung one right there just for simplicity. Like that was the set that, like, hey, if I do leave West Virginia at noon and I get there late, I can just slide right up in there, and it's easy
Right.
access in and out. And we've gotten a lot of good data right in there from some photos, and
Mhm.
it's a unique spot, and it's kind of easy access.
Mm.
So we put one there, and then we went over to the off that main road, like that beech tree setup is
Yep.
what we called it, kind of
That-
right in there. And again, I just thought that was a good, like, okay, I'm on a different side of the property now, and it's also easy access because I really wanted to what we learned through, I've met two of the other property owners in the area now. We're getting a lot of pressure to the on that top there where the folks are kind of hunting it with the side by side, driving to the ladder stand, just kind of pushing it all around. So I wanted to kind of play off of that and stay as far off of that as I can and let the deer come to me.
Right.
So a lot of it, like those were our 3 sets. Now, when my brother and I were there, we hunted over to the right there, just kind of like because I would still bring some lock-ons and we would hang and hunt. Like, so we spent a little bit of time over in that general vicinity too, on that elevation line about where the mouse is. But overall, we that was the 3 sets, and then we kind of stayed below them, at least tried to
Right.
this year.
Right. Giving a lot of that to the deer. That's awesome. So tell me about this particular buck that you ended up taking. Was this one that had been, frequenting the property? You guys had some intel on him?
Um, a little bit. I mean, it's kind of like what I'm noticing, and this is something our big push this year is going to be opening up the canopy, creating more bedding areas as you see laid out there, and also the food plots. Like that's one thing that I think we lack. Because we're getting a lot of really good deer kind of earlier on when the crops are in.
Mm-hmm.
And as the season goes on, they're still in there for sure, killable, but they're fading back to those back properties. And the reason that I know is I've met the other landowner, and they're super cool. Like we clicked, and he showed me some pictures, and I have all those deer, and their property's a clear cut.
Mhm.
So it's telling me that
This
like
guy
those deer are
here.
pushing back. Yeah, right in that
Right.
area.
Right.
So what's cool is the other property we just bought though butts up against that. So that's another thing we hope to maybe, we'll definitely have another set over there above the cabin. But what what we had seen there were just that, I guess early on a lot more deer, and then as the season progressed, they kind of were pushing back a little bit.
Right.
Um,
Right. That makes a ton of sense. So tell me about the day that you killed the deer then. I mean, you killed it uh
yeah.
out of that spot.
Yeah, sorry. So I kind of got off subject there,
No,
but
you're
I
good.
mean, we had that deer on camera a little bit, like right prior to. No, but I guess the other thing is I don't have cell signal there.
Right.
So my intel is lagged for sure. So I just kind like we have a lot of old school SD cameras up.
Hmm.
I tried the cuddy back system and it worked, but it didn't. It wasn't consistent. I need to fix that. But that said, when I go back and look at all the SD cards, like the buck that I ended up killing was on that camera that was in that area within the, a week before. But it all happened so quickly. It was one of those deals where I saw he was making a scrape over there to the right, just like right at daylight. Boom, there he is, comes right in. It was like within a minute done deal.
Wow.
So it wasn't like I didn't have enough time to like say that's this buck or that because there was two bucks that I really, really, really wanted to get a shot at that were awesome deer. The deer I killed was awesome, but just a little bit bigger. They were a little bit more unique. But this guy came in and I just saw the side of his rack and I'm like, you know what? It's mature. This is, and I really just kind of had that itch to get a deer down on the property because that's after all the work,
Yeah.
time, money going into it. Um, and it was just too good of a setup, like to let that go.
Yeah.
It all was like, okay, I walked in and it was like raining that morning. So access A plus. Rain lets up. It's 7:30. See a deer, walks right in within 15 yards and in and runs 20 yards and done. Like,
Wow.
so it was like the picture perfect. You couldn't draw it up any better. But he was on that camera though when I went back and checked it. Just kind of, wasn't hanging around because this is kind of a travel corridor, just kind of in and out. You could see him a couple different times.
Right, right. Greg, I'm curious about the work that you guys did prior to the hunting season. What are some of the things that you accomplished, and what of that do you think contributed maybe to where you guys were at or like having success?
Yeah, so year one, a lot of what we ended up doing was revolved around one, these stand locations that we talked about that we went in and set, which just included not only cleaning out the shooting lanes, but the quiet hunter access route. So the red line that leads to the stand location. Obviously, you would imagine that something like this, with him pulling this deer at first light, being able to slip in there quiet was really important.
Huge. Absolutely.
Definitely help with that because that deer was obviously close by before Kurt got up into the tree. And
Yep.
then, other than that, the extension of the work was really revolved around the travel corridors. And
Hmm.
I was out there by myself for a day earlier in the springtime, cutting and marking out a lot of these travel corridors. And I really focused on cutting the travel corridors in front of these core stand locations, right around like that 50 to 100 yards in each direction, really
Right.
trying to funnel that movement. And like with this stand location in particular, with this being that drainage top, we actually got blessed where we have these blockers set up. We had a big wind event come through southern Ohio, and it actually knocked
Hmm.
down a bunch of mature timber right down the side of this drainage, which
Nice.
makes deer accessing from where we have our hunter access nearly impossible, and it really enhances this travel up top. So we actually cleared
Hmm.
out that travel corridor going this way while Kurt was on the property, me, Kurt, and his buddy, and we opened this up. And I think that really enhanced this section right here, with the addition of this mock scrape. It's such a prime cruising location for these bucks because even though we didn't get to some of this upper ridge bedding that's on the works for this year, it's already pretty good natural bedding because these are the areas that the previous landowner did some of that logging. So, not knowing to them, they actually made pretty good bedding habitat on the property. So, this was
Yeah.
an area when we first walked the property, this top of this bowl, there was already a lot of bedding activity in there. You could tell there was some doe bedding. There's some marked up buck sign where there's a little bit of some buck hangouts, things like that. So really, those travel corridors was the main thing we focused on here in year one.
Right.
Yeah. And I did hunt that stand a couple times prior to killing and visually saw deer like it's one of those stands where like you don't see anything and then all of a sudden five deer just poured out because they were bedded up in there and it's
Mhm.
very hard to see them because of all the blowdowns and just wind events plus the previous owner taking timber off and just leaving it kind of nasty. So we visually saw it as well.
Right.
With deer just pouring into that stand, like right at, it was like a light switch went off both times I was in there. And then one day I actually saw a buck bedded. He was probably 100 yards, but it's so thick in there. It's like I saw him and then like I couldn't find him again.
Wow. Wow.
So
Yeah, that's incredible. It sounds like there's only good things ahead
Yeah.
with property, but with those travel corridors, I was actually talking with a client of mine yesterday, and he had gone in and cut in some travel corridors too, and he said he's like, Josh, I think of the habitat improvement that I've done so far, because he's already put in some food plots and different things like that. He said I think those travel corridors are the best thing I've done because he had a little bit
Mhm.
thicker property and he was like, cutting those, all of a sudden it's a highway. Cutting it and then staying out. Cutting
Yep.
it,
Mhm.
staying out of the core. Those two things just absolutely transformed this other property. So it seems to be a consistent theme, popping up again. But Kurt, I'm
Mhm.
curious about what's next, man. I mean, you had success, on the
Right.
property. You got a deer under your belt. What's the next step? Like, as we get into, habitat season. I mean, it's hard to think about when you got a foot of snow on the ground, but we are
Right.
getting into habitat season now. So what's on the docket for this year to set you up for success in 2025?
So this 2025 is going to be our big push year. I've been nagging Greg already, probably 2 months ago, starting, but like this year, I really want to get the food plots is the main thing that you see there in the green, and we got all that lined up. Dozer operator ready to go. I'm super excited about that because I think that's going to be a game changer. So that is priority one. The bedding that you see laid out there as well, we're going to finalize that. We have the couple water holes that we tried to do last year, couldn't get them in because of the soil being rocky, but we're going to have that all established. And then we'll have more, Greg identified some more stand locations that I didn't utilize yet. But once we get the food plots in there, we'll hope that'll open up more stand opportunities as well.
Excellent.
I mean, those are the big ones. This is the big, big, big push year, and then
Mhm.
also, I'm anxious to see what transpires on the other 21 acres. That's kind of like something else that we're going to see what transpires over there. We got some cameras hung over there now. We went down, I think it was the weekend after Christmas actually, and kind of journeyed around there. A lot of good sign on that side as well, and there's a lot of bedding right above it. So, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do there on that side, but time will tell. So, this is the big, big push here on, major, major improvements to set us up for success for the 25 season.
Yeah, excellent.
Is anything I missed, Greg? I think that's pretty much
I think
the
that's about
main.
it. I think that's really what our game plan is for this upcoming year. And one thing I did want to add, and this is just a good tip for anybody. One thing that Kurt and I had talked about, because where Kurt's property is to where my house and property is, it's only about a 15-mile gap. So
Mm.
I know a lot of times, especially with us, we're working with very similar soil types. It's poor soil, it's rocky, and our best option for this food plot seed is going to be going out and ordering it from a supplier to get it shipped into our area. And we had discussed how we're just going to plan on potentially putting that order together. And this is just a really good tip for anybody that owns hunting property. Maybe your neighbors or people in the area. If you want to go out and order that seed in bulk, it can really help save on shipping costs, because there's really no point of me putting in a seed order and Kurt putting in a seed order when we're going to get the same thing and then each pay that individual shipping, when we can kind of combine it together and reduce that cost. So if you do know other landowners in your area, whether they're your neighbors on the same road, whatever it may be, definitely worth collaborating if you do plan on using one of the out of state or not in your region seed suppliers for that.
Yeah, very, very good. Good
And
tip.
that just triggered a thought for me. I mean, that's one of the things that was awesome for me is Greg is so close by that in another chapter of my life when my kids are grown up and out of the house, I'd love to go down there and work all weekend. But having Greg nearby to go and knock these projects out when I can has been a super, super big deal for me.
Right.
Um, because otherwise we would probably not have gotten much done at all other than hang tree stands. Because when we did go down to work, well, we spent half the time cutting trees out of the road we were trying to drive. You know what I mean? It's like, dang, we didn't get half what I wanted. I guess that's always the case though with land work for me, it
Yep.
seems like is I have all these ambitious plans and then I get a fourth of it done because there's trees down everywhere.
Yeah.
So just aside made me think of that when we are talking about the food plot seed is just having somebody available that knows what they're doing that I trust that could be down on the property in 15 minutes and get this done while I'm doing my thing here at home.
Yeah.
That's been huge for me.
Right. Help you move that ball down the field without you necessarily being on site. Like
That's right.
that's a big one. That's a big one. And yeah, people ask all the time, once we're handing off, hey, here's your calendar, here's your report, here's all the habitat stuff. And, we do follow up calls and try to give the best support we can after the consultation is done. And they say, well, I'm going to go out and do this weekend. How long do you think it's going to take? And my joke is, it's going to take twice as long as you think it will. And
Right on.
it's going to cost twice as much as you think it will. And
Right.
you're probably going to go the first weekend and not get it done. And so you're going to have to go back.
Yeah.
So just
Yeah.
be aware, carry that chainsaw with you because there will be trees in the road. So,
Right on. Yeah. Always.
yeah, absolutely. Well, good deal, Kurt. Thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you sharing your experience and your property with us. Looking forward to seeing what happens next year. Looking forward to see that grip and grin from fall 2025. But Greg, thank you for joining me as well. Folks, go check us out on our YouTube channel. Check us out online, and you can learn more about how we can help you get your property dialed in. Thanks for listening.